Yeah, actually, the University of Redlands, the Quran Swigi, President Dana Singhi, and Gagan number Sodan, Lulus and Samlolia, Doran Dens on Samlolia, Subdishai.
I'd like to offer my greetings and sentiments of welcome to all of you tonight at the University of Redlands here. Particularly, I would like to thank the president of the university as well as all of the teachers and students here for having me, and welcome to all of
you. Actually, I have not. That also disappeared somewhere. Okay. That name, 아주 가출해 되지. 아주 유니버시티지다 믹스에기 가출해 되버 여비체는 아주 여기 루주. 팅이지 비게 야갈이야 폐체. 아니 가출해 아주 냠도 둘린차 충분해. 이주산에 wonderful experience. 아주 냠도지 믹스에기 가출하다지. 다카르에 냠도 파사 상부자 총송 지단 제비는 녜게마 관소려야 돼 녜섬주를 셰브다 조디 아는 아주 냠도지 가르에 계속 섬주 셰링을 제례를 체제 이토는 알아이네야 롭션시다 총부터주세 다 롭션에 라브디 아주 핀지 지 가르에 자시긴 제바 세난다도 초변 제바 상변 제바디 띵사버 총배 선화로 총되게 아니 인주산 다리가 대야 용배 겁리야 아니 가쉐디 아주 뭐 냠돈 좀배기 로주 망고지 미세 청한데 펩시 냠돈 좀하고 업충부디 나 가보시다 총수야이
I have a very special connection with this university because on 2 occasions a group of students from the University of Redlands visited me in India, and I had a wonderful experience with them discussing many topics together. This was really planted some excellent seeds in me, and it wasn't just a case of me teaching them or speaking to them about something. The main thing that happened is that we got together and shared our thoughts on various topics. And I feel that these discussions were profound in this way, but even more important than that to me was the deep feeling and experience of friendship that occurred during these exchanges. So therefore, my favorite among all of the reasons that brought me here to the University of Redlands is the opportunity to be together once again with these friends of mine.
Yeah. And Dana Jidari, the Kasanguma Kashwede, yes, Shebi, Kasha, Kasanguma University, Kasa.
You Stanford?
Oh, Stanford, because it's Chibre. I would judge of Share and Dana Singi did Kashwe Yachambu and the Beji Kashwe Niera Chambu Yinza, the Kashwe heaviness, some of the Twar Chonson. The Indian as a university dinner Yonche, me say the dinner, me say the Kashwe relaxing the Jiran and Dana Singi did the Kashwe Kimle Levet Sonamuch. 직전에 이게 아주 labrin 디난기 안에 루루망부시 아주 데버를 사마차비 인상 텔레덴시 이 유니버시티 딜레 레벨 거리냐 지 팀레 레벨 전화로 지고도스 근데 인주산 디규즈 때는 데리데 유니버시티 홀 카스웨지 39 넬레남틀이야 시라카브 총스 도체나 샤인스.
Just a few days ago, I made a visit to Stanford University, which, as you know, is a very large, famous and important institution. And because of that, there was a feeling of heaviness within me about being there. It was kind of a serious thing. But coming here today and yesterday, it's been much more relaxing for me. There's been a sense of spaciousness in my coming here, and that's because of the profound and very positive connection I have with friends at the University of Redlands. So rather than feeling a sense of seriousness and heaviness, I actually have the feeling of coming home. And so I'd like to thank you for providing this opportunity to me, and I would especially like to thank everyone who has participated in hosting me and welcoming me here.
다들 가수하다 두주를 가르쳐도 랑 알라고 그러다.
라서?
주주의 기분도.
Olaso?
다들 가수 당에 섬주 망고지 가수지 세전 다디 하드스 노벨 사람들이 대비 맞지 도스 중요하래 인도산에 인도산 급지 인도산 소다 정예게 전화셔야 알지 가라서나 the spiritual leaders somewhere that is means and me 망고지 도제 치야래 미 망고지 도제신 좀링 가서 가는 미 망고지 도제 치야래 가시 출로라 이제야 가시 이제매마 가시 지 출로 담는데 미는 망고지 도제 근데 저도 냠도 진짜버리 니주 망고지 강에 지 니주 망고지다 강에 망고지 편주 시야 고급 용되게 하래 근데 인도산에 디균센데네 and collegiality she got where Zamlingi Nedang Dan is Zamlingia Sosugi Tezuyam Dushedi and collegiality Karshu Kuzugi Mangus Tuje Chabatel Dance build up somewhere that the Digic Chachumbre, Trinity and tell and Jesse around some association.
Lasso? Can I build up Jungsung?
Lasso, you've some
Lasso, knowledge double. There's been a book published of some of my thoughts and views called The Heart is Noble. And in connection with that, I'm seen as a spiritual leader. And from that perspective, I have the opportunity to meet with many different people. Some of them have faith in various religions or spiritual traditions. Some of them are non-believers. But I have a chance to meet with many different people of many different backgrounds and perspectives, and we've had opportunities to share our views with each other on various problems that the world is facing. And I think that through all of these exchanges, that I have built up a little bit more of a refined view about what is going on in the world.
Adrin Justane Digi Kashwe Dachi Tamsi interdependent, interconnected somewhere. That indeed Dushedi that Digi philosophy in the Vizidan, Dana Singi Digi Kashwe Dachi Pa Singiriba, Kashwe Gunzen, which viewpoint the Chibo Memba. That the value somewhere, value in Berchikang, interdependent value. They are so Mizina Lolea, Tijin Tandi, Kanjiche, the Mizina Lola Levchitang, Mizina Lolea, and a Kashwe, that is Sona Levchik somewhere, in emotional level somewhere, that Jekone Levchati, Ketchumberchik Tongus.
And what I think I have come to cultivate further is the understanding of the importance of the reality of interdependence and interconnectedness, not just as a philosophy or not just as an intellectual viewpoint alone, but really the value of understanding this reality in a way that is applicable to daily life and a way that can be appreciated in daily life on a practical level as well as on an emotional level.
다 디게서 당부 거주도 산에 아란지 초아로 치슈디 아주담 베나지 natural environment 다 디 데바디 토하네 아주 셰비입니다 아니 디 미세가 아란 미세 초나로 주원디가 어떻게 가레사나 아라 충두 살롱 치스선에 자도 계서 사설부디 아니 표기 샤르조다 롱보 구교는 진미인상 안딜이야 살롱 주디산에 소지 가서 정중 구요다 타니버지 대야지라 정중게다 모임스마로 디방라 바 니아르 드리지 고급로 두수미인상 디균전데네 디토는 셰비나 나랑 게게다 손아체로 주요 드링두산 디토는 슈요
That's all. In this context, one of the issues that's very dear to my heart is the natural environment. And the reason I like to speak about the natural environment so much is because I feel a special connection with it, particularly due to the fact that I was born in a very isolated village in eastern Tibet that was surrounded by great beauty of the natural environment. Due to this, I feel that I really had an opportunity to sleep in the lap of the Mother Earth. And I really think that this instilled in me a natural appreciation for the environment. That's why I like to explore the issue of the environment so much.
제상 아주다 친력이 지den스나 장도 야나 정중쿠데다 제가 차단을 된 아주 배발이야 다 변도지 샤요 다디 친력이 지된 난 주기 심제사 다 디기 아주를 픽처는 좀 가서 다디 아주당 녀기 지된 정중쿠된 제가 근제 예매디 아주를 imagination sanada the picture of the Australia or something to Karasana Nugi Zidendi and sustaining us and Tanashin being also holding Chedaviches support Tanashingi Chikarsure protecting Chedaviches. That dinner Yebe Jugi Semjen Sedusane, as Semjen Digedi, Ju said nurtured Jaza Chinug Zidendi as nurturing celebration. Then to san digi azulia 친유의 지대는 난주기 심지엔디 편주지를 지대인 인데베지랑 쉔니기 지대인디 아솔리아 지 sustaining somewhere 다 기스 가수의 체득이 없디 저버디 서비스 등의 손아용.
That's all. I feel that one of the best examples from Tibetan teachings that illustrates our relationship with the natural environment is the teachings that talk about the environment as a container and living beings as the contents of that container. So this is a kind of metaphor that I think speaks very clearly to our relationship as living beings with the world around us. It makes a very clear picture. The world is like a container and we are what is inside it. So the world is continually sustaining us, it is holding us in place, it is supporting us, and it is protecting us. So I think this metaphor of the world as container and beings as contents is a very helpful one in this way. We're continually in mutual dependence upon each other.
다는 신경 아주 주기 심지에서 남편주인비나 찍을 찍대인 되지. 그런 아주 사회에서 저 견배 그 아주 남규지 배주 땅 대학이 지 가서 프로젝트 somewhere 망고치 가시지 이 송계 미드서 아주 미지나로라 돈요야 말에 고주민 군요야 말에 아주 멋진겨 말에 예미는 고주기다 가수회지 슈겐스나 장도 야나 고주기 딱 가수회지 바 뉴버르디 펜토르 등 아줄이야 레디어라 인데 미준센을 되네 뭐다 유네 아주 좀링바 남편주 탐지 질직 직댄스나다도 질직 대바용 되게 열지. ဒီ 대바용아디 더가스 가수회지 Dishi gap deba samay ba. Susu mizi nalo, nimari mizi nalo, tang, energy kamari chuzu richi di nalo ya, ngoyo sun deba yang de yuchi. Tiang, ji karwe. Emotional level sana dando. Dana singi chowa ngoyo nalo ya, deba chadi yuchi. Chadi.
So not only are the sentient beings and the world, that is their environment, in a continual interdependent relationship with each other, but the sentient beings themselves relate to each other in an interdependent way. All of the food that we eat, all of the clothes that we wear, all of the products that we enjoy come about due to our interdependent relationship with other sentient beings. We may not know who the people are who work in the factories that make the things we use. We may never have heard their names, but they and their actions have a strong impact on our lives. And they benefit us very directly. So in these indirect and direct ways, we are in constant interdependent relationship with others. We are constantly connected to others. And so it's important to have an understanding of this, not just as an intellectual understanding, but in a way that we try to bring this appreciation into every minute, every hour, every day of our lives. So we can try to appreciate this more on an emotional level and on whatever other levels that we can bring directly to bear in our experience.
Ane ti gyunsan tene, chile chiden zhaw yabe yinza, ti gyunsan tene, nga da shen sa, nga sa de, nga namgyu nga zhe ki conceptual thought samar bata ji nam to ru chi, dong to ru chi, yin sa nga sa de ti zhe, rang wang wa ji tsuk tu ban ru de ji samar ru tang ga ra de, ngoy ni chu tha le ya. Nga sa de 간다 셴 매바라 나사지 라완다 속도를 내줘야지 그라 합시다 드리비 군산데네 나사디야 아니지 셴라 떼대버지 소식 아이덴티티는 미신다 떼대버지 소소 소아이나 미신다 떼대버지 드인두산에 디군산을 때네 아니 핀수 제상 아주기 넘규 나다 켜서야돼 다른 부르지 ngāsa yūzāne, ane shī sūtubhara chikdāng, xiānsa yūzāne, sūtubhara bhikaya yabachi. Tani tīngi pāntā gyāntā chimpu yabachi. Tani samtanga ārade, tuandāmbala ya, ane shī, tindrega gyāntā mēba tsamda māsayabhe, pēchir ngāsa yādi xiāngi chāshīn yabachi la, xiānsa yādi ya rāngi chāshīn yabachi. Tani chī, chānāru yōndi.
Therefore, since we are always in mutual interdependent relationship, we can see clearly that these labels of I versus other are just conceptual fabrications. They're just projections of our mind. We usually think of myself and me as something that is independent and that can stand on its own. But in true reality, there is no I or me without others. This I or me cannot stand on its own without the support of others. Our own identity depends on others. Our own feeling also depends on other people. Furthermore, we usually have an assumption that there is a great distance between these two things called me and you. But in reality, there is no distance between these concepts of me and you. In true reality, the concept of me is a part of others. And similarly, the concept of others is actually a part of ourselves.
이나 ngazugi pena ngadi sad pena nangbe gi dangme ko shiyar churu khaji dangme ko shiyar so who are you sar juar len da di ngadi kwan do ngadi ina del ji jena also misangwal the interest ja yo mare ngarai samsam di kiz tuale di tadi diskala khabrishto
Lasa.
was me da kwa nga de kwando nga di nga ge chensin de bitse da ina de ge tada nga su din shia de philosophy din de ge mai bitse je da tada nga su shia din nga da kye liya nga su sa ba nan xin gi yang da ji me bi yin za tele de ne ge zhe ke chi shu de gar cha de yer sna nye gi zheni gi didu tiang ani mi shin da ki didu cha de ji da mi shin da ge didu tiang ani ji ngara zheni gi didu de de string ju di gyun zel de ne nga zu tin je ge ji ren rang da xian sa ge zhe di da more in a sort of ka shu le ji day-to-day life somewhere de ji chuang wo ge na lo ni nyam le chi dang ko xie de ma de yang ji ji dang me ji nga de chue sa ju di ge zhe di ji xian na
Lasa. But I want to be clear that where I'm going with this talk about the lack of distance between self and other is not in the philosophical direction of Buddhist teachings on personal selflessness, for example. You can really go in that direction intensely if you want to, and get into all kinds of analysis about who am I, where is the self in the body and the mind, and so forth. But my emphasis on this talk about lack of separation between self and other isn't really about that type of philosophical analysis. I myself have difficulties in answering these philosophical questions sometimes, like, who am I? What is the self? And so forth. So philosophy is not my main point here. My main point is that we can actually feel and experience this lack of separation between ourselves and others in our day-to-day life. So when I say that there's really, truly no distance between ourselves and others, I'm speaking from the perspective that we can actually recognize that our own experience of happiness and suffering is the same as the experience of happiness and suffering that is felt by others. And the happiness and suffering that is experienced by others can also be experienced by ourselves. We share this common ground of experience in terms of our own happiness and suffering. And that's something we can actually see and feel in a practical way in our day-to-day lives.
California, Missouri, citizen, choose Shabbat, Dangwa Shabbat, the Kasa Gage get Dangwa Chibo Choyamane, the California citizen Jiggy Dangwa Choyamane. That the Jigana, choice Shabbat, the America Yongi Dangwa of Jida, Yana Zambuling Beyongi Dangwa of Jig Chandu, Dangwa Cha Sigrid something to Hindustani. The impact somewhere. The Kashwe Penangazu Dea, the Chu Gange, the Mongolian the art, the Hindustan, the Guzetin, with the Chu Talia, Peju Dongdang, the Zugin was choice somewhere. Dangwa Chedan Digi, Shugi, energy Kashwe Mimanguchidang, and then the Jashambujilia, Shugin have to say of Hindustan, the Gunzel Dene. And also tinjek dan java yabadi tinjek java di chil chideng ge java sana ran do ran da shen ge java di chwa ngo na lo le ya in secular level somewhere be yana ji chwa ngo level to le ya ti ngo jong da chi me Hindustan da tin yang a awareness ko ade ke.
For example, we could consider ourselves a citizen of California making a choice about the life that we live in California. But the choice about the life that we live in California really isn't the choice of one individual. It's actually a choice for all of America, and in some ways a choice for the whole world. For example, in the context of the water difficulties that the state of California is experiencing, there could be one individual in California who makes choices about how to use their water, but this choice has a great impact on not only the state of California, but broader ripple effects on the entire world. So this is an example of how we are in continuous relationship with each other, and we're really not all that far apart from each other. So this mutual dependence can be an awareness that's cultivated as really a secular form of knowledge.
이내 따뜻히 비준셀 때네 아주지 responsibilities 아디 아주 찔레 찌된 이베 인상 소소기 디돌리안 겐키고 여버나 신기 에너지 디데기 찔레 찌된기 가르레 interdependent 가르레 다 긴쿠르 삼로디 딜레용 거래 이나팅 긴쿠르 삼로디 다 페나지 you should do this you shouldn't do that somewhere 다 드르지기 직 dide che chore dide che ma chore sa ji yang di gingur dinde mai ba I want to do samar bata ji this ji chak go ba sa tle ge ne ani ji nge chan de ba tang chan min de ba sa ji kan da su su ngwe ne me ba tang tang lang ge thon dide ji chung bi na dide ji gi de encouragement sa di ka shu encouragement ko at Lasa. Ane kashwe ginkurti ningdobdan dembe ginkurjidang 당랑의 dembe ginkurjigwaade keshibshari yare. Tenjebegi ene 당랑 kashwe ningdobdabdi yanam judisgi ningdobdi ane ningji zawaruchi. Ningji saade ningdob mebe ningji imbina. 안 바지 가서 닌지 딱 뉴디에는 차도 아마들이 인두산티 주제된데
So with this heightened awareness of interdependence comes a heightened sense of responsibility. Just as we accept responsibility for our own experiences of happiness and suffering, we can broaden that sense of responsibility in light of the reality of interdependence and how our actions impact the world. So this sense of responsibility isn't a heavy or imposed sense of responsibility. It doesn't say, you should do this or you should do that, you need to do this or you need to do that. It's an inspired sense of responsibility that naturally has the sentiment of, I want to do this. I want to make this change. So this type of natural inspiration and feeling self-encouraged and having a sense of steadfastness or power of the heart is very important. This power of the heart or strength of heart is the essential root of compassion. Compassion without strength of heart isn't a powerful form of compassion. So having some type of natural inspiration for this responsibility that we are cultivating is very important.
링주산에 닌지사 대야 닌지 대야 아주 남게 있어야들이야 닌지리야 나버니 소르 다 간다 또 남주 아주 인중사 시고다 인중사디 대주산 닌지사디 카낭도 러니 고인의 인중 같이 심지는 고인의 인지사 기르시가래 간다에다 인중사나야 지지는 인중사 디 시주사네 딱한다 랑을 미비 닌지 저치 랑리아 지 가수 caring 자지당 러니 가림 가수에 내당디 하고 자지당 다나 신기 아니 가수에 랑리아 encouragement somewhere 닝독당 다나 신기 awareness delivery energy 가서 랑리 미비 니지 소르체 안 드네 안 셴리아 닝자오 자치 대주사 디주셀 때네 셴라 년자오의 모종년리아 랑리아 닝도바 뉴버디 공배동과디 셴리아 닝자와 닝자의 삼바 야게 동아 자와르지 저거면서 맞아.
And this compassion, this inspired compassion, needs to be directed to ourselves in the beginning as the first step. In traditional Buddhist teachings, they talk about what has often been translated into English as renunciation. can also be translated as a determination to be free. They talk about that as the first stage in spiritual training, and then after that comes the training in compassion. What renunciation or the determination to be free really is compassion that is directed towards oneself. And then that same sentiment or feeling directed outward to others is what we call compassion proper. But in any case, it needs to begin with an attitude of loving kindness toward oneself and a willingness to take care of oneself and more deeply understand the situation that oneself is in. With this, we can encourage ourselves, develop more inspiration and strength of heart, and more awareness that we can then extend to others very naturally, embodying true, fully qualified, genuine compassion. So this loving heart directed towards oneself is the first step. And without that, our compassion directed toward others won't be fully genuine. So in order to have genuine compassion toward others, we have to have care and love for ourselves.
미마오지기 compassion 고아디 미마오지 신가 때문에 compassion is that 니지 컨디스 샤워라스 컨디스 샤워라스 미마오지기 exaggerated somewhat 다 가르치는 지 첨부를지 지 선규난 전과를지 headline을 제제 다 가르쳐비네 가시는 양알 남년들의 종류 땅아 시에야 편도체고도 근데 인자 데즈 규첨부지 차고도 사람보다 왕제 첨부지 차고도 사람이지 근데 신인도 많고 좋았어 다 이비량 아주 지 가서 compassionate gain kuya action 차들이 인지미지들이 exaggerated somewhat 첨부지 제가 마인바 아주 니머지기 너무 소화섬으로 지당기 소화계당 나로 텔레딘 소화계당을 댄시네 아니 시엘이야 가수에 지 가수다지 현편 주야당 다나 신시엘이야 아니 지 인지 삼바키세 아니 차와주야 룽아 예송 배바차디 아주 이기 가수에 딱 한다 인지 액션이 난기 딱 콤바 당부선에 다도 야나 시제기 가수에 activity somewhere at the chadi hours in Hindustani catch
The fact that compassion is important is well known by almost everyone. But there's a question about how do we do compassion? A lot of people have exaggerated ideas about what compassion should look like. They think that any true compassionate activity must be able to grab headlines somewhere. Also, many people have come to me saying, I really want to benefit others, but in order to do that, I would have to become rich. Or, I really want to help others, but to do that, I would have to gain a lot of power. The true compassion, however, I think, is something that doesn't involve those kinds of requirements. Being truly compassionate and responsible means just working with our day-to-day experiences in a skillful way. Every single day-to-day normal experience and normal feeling that we have can be a stepping stone for compassion. We can use all of these normal daily experiences as a basis of benefiting others, physically, verbally, and mentally. So, taking this very pragmatic and ordinary approach to compassion is the first step in our training and the foundation of all of our other further developments. And I think it's important to understand this.
아들 주산에 너나 나중에 가수에다지 compassion 사례야 처신의 melham드시래. 드레인 주산에 아주 melham사디 삼삼 아주 남기 가르쳐서나 melham사디 에네 다 제토나 액션 지어레스 대 제모토나 아니 make aspirations service.
That's it.
다 이비네 compassion 디 가르치 디 케이스 가르쳐서나 action da aspiration nyamdo yedi
Lasso?
geya ko aspiration che azu aspiration di samsam azu karshwesna bodhisattvas karshu chanju some of these aspirations is aspiration di almost beyond reality samarve taji tni dusan thi gyunzela dene aspiration di jacham shivje yinsa facing any challenges samarve taji kange kharesh chebi binya digi tele geche ro thyachi sesang azugi compassionate di karshwe taji myolam di khaji ge che yebinya digi shugi azugi ta action di ayina digi gyuntu continuation samarve yongtuyaji dang di nubati mutu in rotuyaji ya an aspiration di shurib gewechi then you sa aspiration da and the action samarve nigalo nyamdon ra yechi madabe tadri you sa di gyunzen dene and compassion is sade chojin action cha de gewechi chojin aspiration cha de gewechi chona yongde
From one perspective, you could say that compassion is an aspiration, because compassion is the wish for us to help sentient beings become free of suffering. But from another perspective, you can say that compassion is an action. Really, we need to bring our actions and our aspirations together as the main way that we travel the path of compassion. Whatever we can do, we should do that. That becomes part of our compassionate activity. Whatever we can't do, we can make aspirations. And that's our compassionate heart expressing itself as well. So the bodhisattvas, the great heroes and heroines of the Buddhist tradition, courageous beings, are well known for their vast and profound aspirations to be of assistance to living beings. The aspirations of bodhisattvas are famous for being extremely extensive, almost beyond realities that we could conceive. The bodhisattvas aspire to be able to face any challenges that come their way and transcend all of those challenges in their quest to be of benefit to sentient beings and benefit to the world. So these aspirations are very important because they are like the fuel that makes the continuous thread between our individual tangible actions. So the aspirations alone, of course, aren't enough. We need actions to support our aspirations and to give our aspirations an expression. But at the same time, our aspirations link our actions together and provide for continuity. So in this way, we should always try to bring our aspirations and actions together on our path. One side of compassion is our aspiration, the other side is our actions. Laung, Yuri. Lasso? Lasso? Okay. So I think that's about all that I should say in terms of the lecture component of this evening's event. There have been some questions submitted in advance to me, so I think that it would be good to take the time remaining to for us to hear some of those questions. I'm not quite clear on when the evening's events should come to a close, so I'll just take a few minutes now to hear some of the questions that have been posed and perhaps make a few comments in response to those. And then we'll see where we end up in terms of time. So the translator will read the questions that have been pre-submitted. This question comes from a student group working on environmental issues. Yeah. How can people of different religious traditions work together to support environmental change and protection?
Yeah, the environmental issues that is beyond political, beyond religion, 점링기 콜라디 간에 손에 제 구예베 인상 디 균셀 때네 ngasulya 마튜마 망보여 알았디 다 이나 세 콜란디는 아주 삼로 마튜는 균들 지르바 라 아주 디스 마튜마 망보여 알바
라레
베네 추루 베네 첩시 토하네 아주 다와 마튜마 추루 토하네 더주 미디마 나서를 좋은디 알때 이메네야 세 콜란디 땡에 손에 채고 하더라 마튜마 매브 아주 삼로 세 콜란디 간이야 손에 채고 야래 예비 균셀 때네 진짜기 가수래지 아주 가수다지 common sense somewhere 다들 가수의 창매기 냠도 지 튠초한도디 아주 심제 남규네지 파주 저바차당 다나신기 대양 가수래지 지당 아주 출루 망부치가 나로래야 지 가서 정중 쿠리오단 저바차당 저바차당당 텔리아 숨겹치다는 제베기 랍체 망부치 용디 야래 이나티 랍체 티기디 상로 미지 나로를 수수 미지 나로리아 컨디스 냠네 체고여바당 다가나 신기 대기 아니 저블링기 구육 숨겹차 털리비나 펜도 컨디지 용토에 메디즈 털리비나 아주 가수라다지 ruling romance chumbina yapshtaya something to me.
That's right. I think the environment is definitely an issue that transcends politics. Sometimes we try to reduce the environment to being a political issue, but actually there's many more components to the environment than just being a political issue. So there are many avenues of disagreement and dissimilarity in the world that we could identify. But more powerful than all of those is the similarity, the commonality that we all share. Primarily, that we are all residents of the same planet. We all share the same home. We all undergo the same joys and sorrows on this home that is the earth. So since we're all connected in that way, there's definitely opportunities for us to share our understanding, to share information about the environment, to share methods of protecting the environment, and to keep each other informed and discuss with each other how we might best go about protecting the environment in our day-to-day lives. So I think it's important for us to discuss this and share with each other how we can bring protecting the environment into our day-to-day lives, and what avenues of protecting the environment will be the most beneficial. I think it's definitely possible for us to find a common ground so that these discussions can take place. The next question is, so many problems come from competitiveness. We seem to be constantly comparing what we have to others and judge our own worth through those comparisons. How can we learn to stop measuring ourselves against others? What are the practical steps to do that?
Measuring.
Lare.
Oh. Tadi jindur chadi. Tadi jindur chadi. Kashura da. Da harishla da. Tadi jindur chadi kodriya mise. Kashura. 아주 남규네 지 진dur 체두산에 그두이네 지 more 그두이네 젠다 시설부터 more high level 소머베 지 강리야 젠다 차마도베 마 월이야 두리아르드 시타용문도 다지 지 가르스베다 지 드린두산 디균셀 데네 두르두산에 아니 마신에다 디상 기주들이야 아니 지 가르스베 consumerism sanadando yamanaji tapen news re dana singi ji tv re kanji thone mine mangbochi karso ngasulia ta chapra mangbochi advertisement mangbochi yondi yare de di gyunzel dene ani karso da ji kyora didij goare spena keba ina didij goare pume ina didij goare sarbuchi 다들이 용대야 지 근데 뭐 정비나 아니 저랑 배치니 마상으로 시 근데 지 망고 저한테 윈도스안에 아주 샘디 쉽지기 가서 disturb somewhere disturb sananda도 야면은 지치기 가서 지조기 다가르에 스웨샤베기 reality somewhere 티기 가서에 아주리아 슈겐심 버시비텐 또 용디 가르 윈도스안에 다 개치슈디 가서에 아주 수수응외네 사물 하고 싶다한지 오늘 전에 소소리야 not just we want 아소리야 대바지 보면 오늘 전에 개바 가림 바탕 다나 신기 오늘 전에 meaningful 가림 바 다디 사물 시버를 당하지 아니 소소기 가수에 장왕기 고네스나 다도 소소의 참변 주름사야디 계심심하다
Lasso? Our attitude of competitiveness is mostly directed towards people who we perceive to be in a better situation than ourselves or in some type of higher situation than ourselves. And this type of way of thinking is actually encouraged by the mentality of consumerism and actually by a lot of marketing that we see through television and other forms of media. There are many advertisements that essentially try to convince us that we aren't enough as we are now, that we don't have what we need already, and that if you're a man, you should have this, this, and this, and if you're a woman, you should have this, this, and this, and so forth. When we buy into that narrative that is being sold to us, our minds become disturbed, and we start believing the stories that are told to us by certain elements of society rather than trusting our own heart or trusting our own intelligence. So I think the most important thing in terms of transcending a competitive mentality is to not just think about what you want, but to think about what you really need, and to think about what is really meaningful for yourself. And when we approach things that way, I think this will help us to gain a greater sense of autonomy within ourselves. The next question is, does Your Holiness see habits in our society that lead us to decrease our natural capacity for empathy? What are the obstacles to our natural capacity for empathy that we should be most aware of? Tani nga su chitok nangdu tani empathy nyungru tangyaki ken sigiyubes chitoki tani empathy ki parche shukche shir karire.
Oh. Wow. Empathy parche shukche shir 남균 따디레 가서지 등진사 등진사 selfishness 뭐래 selfish 다진진 다진진사 남균에 가서 가서에 망보지기 지 가서에 ben 누저 나올 때디 용데 없디 self some defense some 수수 숨겹치야 된 가래디 안다나 신기 다 망부지 셰리와래 랑 드리 주사네 디 균셀데네 디 직전에 내가 차시 가서 다디 self defense 체고래디 이미는 다디 self defense 데스 가서지 다 진진데 비치 데스 탈롱을 비치 데스 가서 too much 상마르다 데르지 차네 간다 self defense 직전에 마란수기 정한도 차미스 말았어. 정한 정한 유두산 안 디펜시아를 짜라와 고로 짜라와 숨겹치아체도
Lasso?
짜게라와 뭐부치 고르죠. 디펜시아체 제가 짜라와 뭐부치 고르체 에너지 그 다나싱 아주 삽 디펜디 제다 마셰비나 안디 짜라와는 시체체 소수 디나와 쭉 아니 소수 단대바 예배 민유시에지 somewhere that better so Pama Bijenda, Minushi, Tuya, she not the outside world and debate judge. Did she on this? Turn them to any dark town and bush out.
That's all.
They use that teach you said then as a compassionate sati. Sit down, so soon give check of him there. Tiang, so sweet, Kashre. Today, the Kashre selling Debam, Yamana, she Kashre. We need to Maybe. Today, and zinc jar tower the torch teacher about 20. And then as we need to support the condition Bachita. Tedang are super Javaka Hadi, Yabush Tontuya shadow, take jar tower about dog. Last thing you said, did you said there that you no show shed there, sub difference, Dana Singi, Karsura Dazi, Ranisun give Chadang, Rani Kevin give Chadang, Dana is that Rawan. Mi gerge rawan mambusiadi chidamasin de nyanga mento samta
Lasa?
ta kanda tingeji ngada jaba ke chega mento sambara bichida yana ba ngala nyanga yongsare samsara bichi dije ke ton en empathy zadi shara mi yonyaruchi nyuru raruchi ta de yonde mento sam
Lasa?
ta randa ngoshi ba kashi jil empathy zadi yomche ta yim di churi jin empathy ro
Lare?
ta churi mai ba de yonde kala khabarchi.
I think in general, the tendency towards selfishness can be an obstacle towards generating empathy. And of course, one can see that there's certain elements of Western society that might be a little bit more conducive to selfishness, perhaps, than other parts of the world. Of course, some elements of self-protection, self-defense, and self-worth definitely are necessary. But if we take concepts of things such as self-defense or individual liberty to an extreme, then they could become dangerous. And maybe this concept of self-defense can actually be a prison. It can actually become like a prison that we lock ourselves inside of. So instead of actually skillfully defending ourselves, what sometimes happens due to our tendencies of self-centered thinking is that we put ourselves inside this prison with many iron walls surrounding us, and we only let a few people inside, maybe our parents and our closest friends, but everyone else we put on the other side of this hard and impenetrable and opaque wall that we can't see through. That's not obviously a skillful way of being in the world because it doesn't allow for us to open up to any connection to others. It would be very difficult to develop genuine empathy and compassion in a situation like that. So some level of awareness of self-defense is required, and appreciation and enjoyment of individual liberty is also important. But in general, when we talk about training and compassion, what we're talking about is knocking down these walls of the prison so that we can actually go out into the world, see the reality that others are experiencing, and make direct connections with them. That will be beneficial to ourselves and beneficial for others. And sometimes when we get too invested in these concepts of self-defense or looking out for number one or individual liberty and other ways of self-centered thinking, this can harm our development of empathy. Maybe we could have some feelings of warmth toward one or two people or those who are very closest to us, but that would be a biased form of empathy, and it would be difficult to develop genuine or expansive empathy in that context. The next question is, usually when I hear about interdependence, the focus seems to be mostly on physical things. Are we also emotionally interdependent on each other as well? Can Your Holiness talk about how interdependence works inside ourselves?
Inside.
Nangla, sosu nangla. Tene tugun la, ngaso chikla chikten dikyo re ine, ngaso gi chorwa tenso yang, chornang tenso yang, tende gi rang shen base. Tene nang.
I don't know how to say that.
Aha.
Correct.
Nangi chonang tenso yang tende ki rangshin the negi orbe.
I'm just trying to
Mishenda ki chorwa da nganangi chorwa. The tende ki.
That is our session. I don't know how to say that.
Ninga so nangi netang di tende ki rangshin ba kandres.
Nangi netang susane Chidangi interdependence sade and Kashuri Sonang Tori Minich Mizana or Bena Kimsa Chik Nalolia Energy Bena Pamad Chik aggressive Davachi Yavadan Danachi Contosabre Dijavi Pajit Digi Kimsan Tele Rashingi Koran Shugan Tiachidang and Putu this way this salon Yada Kuzu Semkamki Kashuri health summary. Deadhan, some get deadhan, the gilly, then she carshway. You can't hand which you matter something to us.
Lassa. Lassa. I'm not sure if I have.
I'm not a good doctor.
Lassa.
Doctor?
No.
Oh. Okay. I was rammed.
Lassa.
Can't say that them, but rammed. Okay.
Lassa. It seems I'm not a fully qualified master scholar yet.
Always. Okay.
So I'm not sure if I have a perfectly precise answer to address this question, but I would say that we can see the interdependence of the emotional world within us at play in the example of the family situation. If we have a family where the parents have a very aggressive internal nature, then that's definitely going to affect the family as a whole and have a great impact on the children who are growing up in that kind of an environment. It will impact their health in various ways and impact the type of disposition that they adopt as they grow into adults. The next question says, due to the internet and other media, we get constant information about many terrible things going on around the world. Sometimes I feel helpless because I know I cannot directly fix the suffering of those people. It makes me want to just disconnect and turn away from the experiences of people who seem so far away. How can I stay open to the sufferings of people I will never meet?
Okay. Tadi, Kashwe. Tadi Dinsan Zombling is only information T20, and also some of the Zombling Samolo interdependent Yimbati clearly demonstrated some of the Savage Dancer as to Chumbre, and they just antique use and then, and just some Dendengi Kashreji. That the social that are Muye Devik, Midsulia. Then you've been an under Simina. Then you Chikashwe, the news summer raging, something send you mangus that Namjune, Tonara Tadiare, Jeza, and she needs you that something Cascalia needs you Tokyo, needs you mangus on the other. That Italy are directly Chad, Chaske Omare, that Imbinia could you shed. Then they're directly Chad maybe now, could you shed, and the Susugi Kashwe, the aspirations some of the Manam Yadantana Singi and Susugi Kashura the Chawa Chungzaj Madamevina Kuzu Chedu, the dedication child which is done, the Chedu, and then Dengi Kashura Daji. Jimmy Jinga to Chadi, Kaduine Kashura. Lamsang ji Doshu Lamsang ji Pajo del Pen taught to Arjigdan, Nuba Chimberji, Yongwa, Shayar, the Imminent China, the Yongwa member, and that is Sosugi, Kuzu Chedo, Sosutan, Kana Yusitelia, and Kuzu Chedo, Mazuji, Chevi Mina, the Dendengi, and the Shugi, Kuzulia, Pento on the Jigdan, and 니버텐데 그치 작업면으로 섬들을 생각했어.
These days, due to the
디디양 조디 미신다를 떼야 직보면 아주 펜도서 자리 미신다를 지금 떼야 지금 미신다 하고 직보면 랑게 셈리냐 지 뉴버지야 지금 encouragement 샤디야 계속 버릇이
Lasso. These days, due to the easy access to information that we have, the reality of interdependence is demonstrated to us even more clearly than ever before. And of course, a part of this is learning about awful things that happen in the world very shortly after they happen. So even in my own case, I'm continuously reading, watching the news, paying attention to world events, and all the time learning about tragic and sad developments. And sometimes we can feel helpless because there's nothing we can do to directly make things better for the people that are affected. But we shouldn't allow that to discourage us, because what we can do is hold those people in our heart, make aspirations for them, and dedicate even the smallest positive action that we perform to their welfare, healing, and so on. A lot of times we think that in order to respond to a tragedy, we must do something very grand or very powerful, something that can be really seen in a tangible way. But that's not needed all the time. What we can do is dedicate whatever small actions of positivity that we can perform. We can take up these people in our minds and dedicate our actions to them and hold them in our hearts and make aspirations for them. I think that if we do this, then there will definitely be some benefit and some power that arises from that. So when we hear about bad things happening in the world, we shouldn't just interpret it as a situation of information coming at us and knowledge of a bad event that we are gaining. But we can interpret it rather as further encouragement to our own heart and mind for developing positive qualities.
Thank you. 드링 주산 뜻받이 드레를 재미라다 드링 계시야 드링 주산의 양간데 별 참으로래야 두치샤인 그린 치샤인.
So that seems to be all for this evening, and I would like to once again thank you all for coming here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.